Get a different nurse. Get anyone else. Right now, I'm the only one standing between your son and the next 10 minutes.
Crystal, is it really you? I looked everywhere for you.
You didn't look very hard. I never once left this city.
You're not supposed to be here. Not after everything you did.
Neither are you. Not anymore. Whatever you think you found means nothing.
3 nights before his wedding, Daniel Choi collapsed at his own family's engagement dinner. And the only person in the entire hospital who could save him was the woman his family destroyed 2 years earlier. The ballroom upstairs was still full of candlelight and violin music when the first call came in. Nobody there yet understood what was happening. Downstairs, in a hospital that never slept, Crystal Norwood was already elbow-deep in another emergency when the doors burst open. Radios crackled. A gurney rushed past her, surrounded by private physicians in expensive suits who could not agree on what was happening. She had worked 11 hours straight that night, and she still moved like it was her first. Then she saw his face. Pale. Sweating. Struggling to breathe. Daniel Choi. The man she used to call her husband. She did not have time to feel anything. She had a job to do. As she leaned over him to check his airway, a thin gold chain slipped free from beneath her scrub collar, a small jade ring catching the light for just a moment before she tucked it away again without thinking. Behind her, someone gasped. That is her. That is the ex-wife. A tall woman in a cream coat pushed through the crowd of physicians. Daniel's mother, Choi. Her eyes turned cold the moment they landed on Crystal's badge. Get a different nurse, she said sharply. Get anyone else in this building. Crystal did not flinch. She had heard worse from this family, in rooms far quieter than this one. Ma'am, I am the senior trauma nurse on this floor tonight. Right now, I am the only thing standing between your son and the next 10 minutes. You can be angry at me after he is stable. If you love a story where the woman everyone underestimated turns out to be the only one who can save the day, hit subscribe and like before we go any further, because this story is about to test everything you believe about second chances. Tell me in the comments where in the world you are watching from tonight, because I promise you, you will want to be here for how this ends. Now back to that hospital room, where Crystal was about to make a decision that would change both of their lives forever. His vitals kept climbing, then crashing. Heart racing, then dropping. This was not a heart attack. This was not a stroke. Crystal had seen this exact pattern only once before, inside a private clinical file she was never supposed to read. 2 years ago. The same slow, deliberate collapse of the body. The same rare pattern every doctor in that room had quietly called unexplained, and quietly buried. She looked through the glass at the family gathered outside. Has he eaten or had anything unusual tonight, she asked. No one answered. But one man standing at the back of the room, Richard Sung, the family's longtime chief operating officer, looked away first. Crystal called for a specific antidote protocol, one most doctors would never consider without confirmation first. Daniel's personal physician hesitated, glancing nervously at Choi for permission he had no business needing. Crossed her arms. You would let her guess with my son's life, she snapped. I am not guessing, Crystal said. I am remembering something this family paid a great deal of money to forget. Because 2 years earlier, she had begged this same family to run this exact test on another patient at their own foundation clinic. They refused her then too. That patient had nearly died quietly, without anyone ever asking why, and without anyone outside that room ever hearing about it. The monitor beside Daniel's bed let out a sharp warning tone. His oxygen was dropping fast. There was no more time left to argue. Either you let me treat him my way in the next 90 seconds, Crystal said, or you can watch him die while you argue about my credentials. They gave her 90 seconds. It was enough. Within minutes, his heart rate steadied. Color slowly returned to his lips. When his eyes finally opened, blurry and weak, the first face he saw was hers, and for a moment neither of them said a single word. Crystal, he whispered. Is it really you? Do not talk. Rest. I looked for you, he said. After everything. I looked for you and I could not find you. You did not look very hard, Crystal answered quietly. I never left this city. I never left this hospital. I was right here the entire time, Daniel. You just stopped seeing me the moment your mother decided I was a problem to be managed instead of a person to be heard. His hand reached weakly for hers. She stepped back before it could reach her. I saved your life tonight because it is my job, she said. Not because I have forgiven you. Before I tell you what Crystal found buried in his hospital chart that night, I need to ask you something honestly. If the person who destroyed your reputation was standing in the same room with you, pretending to be family, would you say something right away? Or would you wait until you had proof strong enough that nobody could deny it? Tell me your honest answer in the comments because Crystal is about to make that exact choice. And tap that like button if you want to see exactly how far she is willing to go for the truth. Later that night, alone in the records room, Crystal pulled Daniel's admission chart and quietly compared it to something she had kept hidden in a folder for 2 years. A careful list of small, irregular numbers. Numbers she had once innocently mentioned to a friend. Numbers that got her branded a corporate spy and erased from this family's life without a single hearing in her own defense. The toxin markers in Daniel's blood matched a rare compound listed on an old Foundation supply order. An order she remembered seeing flagged as a miscellaneous medical donation 3 years earlier. An order approved and personally signed by only one man, Richard Sung. Crystal sat back in her chair, her hands suddenly cold. It was not a rival company that framed her 2 years ago, the way she had been told 100 times until she almost believed it herself. It was him. The next morning, Crystal quietly asked hospital security to pull the visitor logs for the private family wing over the last 72 hours. Her best friend and fellow trauma nurse, Denise Carter, pulled the records for her without asking a single question. Whatever this is, Denise said, sliding the folder across the counter. I have got your back like always. You've never once needed me to understand it first. One name appeared on every entry. Richard Sung had visited Daniel's private study 4 times in the 3 days before the wedding gala. Each time completely alone and each time late at night. For the first time in 2 years, Crystal was not the one being quietly investigated. Someone else finally was. When Daniel asked to see her again, Crystal almost said no. I cannot keep doing this, she told him. I cannot keep being the strong one while everyone else gets permission to be uncertain, to be wrong, to be forgiven. You are right, Daniel said softly. You were always the strong one. I told myself I was protecting you by staying quiet 2 years ago. I was not. I was protecting myself from a fight I was too much of a coward to have in public, in front of my mother, in front of the board, in front of anyone who mattered to my name. It was the first time he had ever said it out loud, and it cost him visibly to say it. Before she left, his eyes caught something small and gold at her collar. My grandmother's ring, he said quietly, more confused than accusing. You still have it. Crystal only closed her hand around it and said nothing at all. By the next afternoon, Richard made his move. He told Choi that Crystal was manipulating hospital records to reopen an old scandal and force her way back into the family. He pushed the wedding forward, insisting Daniel recover privately, away from hospital questions and hospital witnesses, at the Park family estate, 2 full days early. Crystal watched security quietly begin clearing Daniel's room. If he left this hospital now, the only proof connecting Richard to a decade of missing foundation money would leave with him, behind gates she could no longer walk through, guarded by people who still called her a liar. Even Choi hesitated in the doorway before she left, glancing back at Crystal for just a moment too long, as if some old, buried instinct was telling her that something about this felt wrong. She said nothing. She followed Richard's advice anyway, the way she always had. She had less than 24 hours left. Okay, right before we get into the biggest reveal of this entire story, I want you to make a prediction. Do you think Richard is acting completely alone? Or is there someone even closer to Daniel quietly pulling the strings behind him? Drop your honest guess in the comments right now because in just a moment, you are going to find out exactly how far this betrayal really goes, and it is bigger than anyone in that family ever expected. If you are new here, subscribe now so you do not miss exactly how this story ends. That evening, Crystal drove to the one place she had avoided for 2 years. The Choi family's quiet private chapel, where Daniel's grandmother was buried beneath a plain stone the old woman had chosen herself, refusing anything grander. In her coat pocket was the jade ring she had never returned. Inside its small velvet box, folded and hidden for 2 years, was a note written in careful familiar handwriting. Daniel's grandmother had written it herself, only weeks before she passed away, in the same steady script she once used to write recipes on index cards for a granddaughter-in-law she had grown to love more than her own son suspected. Crystal, it began. I have watched Richard closely for 3 years. I do not have proof yet, only a feeling an old woman refuses to ignore. My son trusts him with everything. My grandson will trust him even more. You are the only person in this family who has ever asked the right questions instead of the comfortable ones. Keep this ring. Keep watching quietly. And when the truth is finally ready to be told, tell it, even if it costs you this family's love. Truth over comfort. That was always our family's real motto, long before it became anyone's business name. Crystal finally understood everything. She had not kept that ring because she could not let go of Daniel. She had kept it because an old woman, wiser than her entire family combined, had trusted a black nurse from Queens more than she had ever trusted her own blood. Crystal had spent 2 quiet years honoring that trust without even knowing it, gathering receipts, screenshots, delivery records, anything that did not add up, never fully understanding what she was building toward, until tonight, alone, in a chapel that still smelled faintly of the old woman's rosewater perfume. Richard had not simply embezzled money to protect a family name. For over a decade, he had been quietly draining the foundation's low-income clinic budget to cover his own son's gambling debts, cutting corners on patient care so carefully that even watchful doctors missed it. 2 years ago, Crystal noticed a shortage in basic clinic supplies and asked one honest question too many. Richard silenced her the only way he knew how, by turning Daniel's own mother against her completely, and letting the family do the rest of the work for him. And 3 nights ago, with an outside audit scheduled for the week after the wedding, Richard made one final desperate choice. Slow Daniel down. By a few more weeks. Even if it meant poisoning the one man who had trusted him since childhood. Crystal did not drive to the Park family estate to win Daniel back. She drove there to stop a lie from finishing what it started. She walked into the private recovery suite carrying a single folder, past security who still remembered her badge from the night before, and let her through without a word. Richard was already there, standing far too close to Daniel's medication chart. You are not supposed to be here, Richard said. Neither are you, Crystal answered. Not anymore. She placed the folder in front of Choi. Foundation records. Supply orders. 2 quiet years of documentation, and finally, a delivery receipt for the exact rare compound found in Daniel's blood, signed by Richard Sung only 9 days earlier. Unji's hands trembled as she turned each page, her cold composure finally cracking into something closer to grief. The room went completely silent. Daniel, still weak but sitting upright now, looked at the man who had taught him how to shake hands, how to read a contract, how to run an entire company. Tell me it is not true, he said quietly. Richard did not answer. He did not have to. Security escorted him out within the hour. The wedding was cancelled before sunset, not because Daniel and Seo Yun fought, but because Seo Yun herself asked for it. I was never really marrying you, she told Daniel gently, without a trace of bitterness in her voice. I was marrying an agreement between our fathers. You deserve better than that. So do I. For the first time in years, Richard Sung would have to answer questions he could not simply buy his way out of, and Choi would have to sit with the quiet, uncomfortable knowledge of exactly who she had chosen to believe, and who she had chosen to cast aside. Crystal did not stay for the apologies that followed. She walked back out into the daylight alone, the folder gone from her hands, the weight of 2 years finally gone from her shoulders. Behind her, through the window, Daniel watched her go, and for once, he did not chase after her. He simply let her choose whatever came next. Weeks passed before Crystal answered any of Daniel's calls. He did not chase her with flowers or grand apologies in front of cameras, the way his family once solved every single problem. Instead, he did something slower and far harder. He personally rebuilt the foundation's clinic budget with independent oversight. He issued a public statement correcting the record about Crystal Norwood, naming exactly what had been done to her 2 years earlier, apologizing without a single excuse attached to it. He did not ask her to come back. He simply, patiently became someone worth being believed again. 3 months later, Crystal found him waiting outside the hospital's staff entrance, in the open daylight, where anyone from his world could see him standing there. I am not here to propose, he said quickly, before she could speak. I am here because you deserve to see me choosing you in public for once, even if you never let me back in. Crystal studied him for a long, quiet moment, the same way she once studied a monitor for signs of a heartbeat she was not ready to lose. Then she reached into her coat and placed the jade ring gently into his palm. Your grandmother gave me this to protect a truth, she said. Not a marriage. I think it has finally done its job. Daniel closed his hand around it, then gently opened her fingers again and placed it firmly back into her palm. She did not give it to the woman who would marry me, he said quietly. She gave it to the only person in this family she ever actually trusted. That is still true today. Ring or no ring, Crystal. This was never about a wedding, and it never should have been. For the first time since those hospital doors burst open that night, Crystal let herself smile at him. Not because everything was healed, because for the first time in years it finally felt honest. Some people protect the truth with lawyers, with money, with silence. Crystal protected it the only way she ever knew how, by simply refusing to stop telling it, even when telling it cost her everything she had left to lose. That is the real lesson tonight. Real protection was never about staying quiet to keep the peace. It was about standing beside the truth, especially when it is inconvenient, especially when it costs you comfort, family, or love. So here is my question for you. If you were Crystal, and the family that once destroyed your name needed you again 2 years later, would you have shown up to save them anyway? Tell me honestly in the comments below. If this story moved you even a little, this is Empire City Romance Stories, and stories like Crystal and Daniel's are exactly why this channel exists. Real emotion, real consequences, real love that actually has to be earned. Subscribe so you never miss the next one, tap that like button if you felt every second of this story, and turn on notifications so you are there the moment the next episode goes live. Thank you for staying with Crystal and Daniel all the way to the very last word. Stories like this are exactly why I do this. I will see you in the next one.